So what I've done today is I have fleshed out a little bit more some of the behind the scenes, checking that everything is actually populating where it's supposed to be. So when you run this test, the user can view a scheduled activity. In essence, you are wanting to know that the data is being created in the database, it's being pulled, and it's being applied to in this case, an HTML web page. So we create the scheduled activity, and we're giving it values of an activity move and groove, a date, October 14th at 9 a.m. And then this is where I still have questions. And tomorrow, the question that I hope to answer is, do I either have the resident model passing itself into the controller somehow, or do I have the scheduled activity model and object go ahead and grab, via maybe a method on that model, go ahead and grab the residents out of the database that would be active, that would be your current resident population, and add that to its set of data that will get passed through. Because regardless, what I'm having to do here is create a scheduled activity object, which is being accomplished here, and pass that through. So what ends up happening is we're passing that ID here via this test. It's going to return a view, but it needs in that view to be able to pull the ID of this activity that's being created. So in essence, this activity is being passed in, or giving it that ID because that's sort of automatic. So here's where the ID is being passed in. So it goes and grabs off of the ORM, object relational model, the scheduled activity object that exists out there via this ID, assigns it to a variable, and that variable, or that object, is now represented here and gets passed into the view. And this is our view. So I created a scheduled activities view, and the show view is what we're looking at. So now what I've done today is gone ahead and fleshed this out a bit more, up and including driving out a unit test to go ahead and format a date. So just to practice a little bit more with the unit test, I'd been at the features level test here with that, and wanted to get into this unit level test. So all that to say, I basically just solidified what I know about passing information from this one object. And the question I have is now, do I add another object to pass, or do I let this object, meaning do I create another object, this resident object, and pass it, or do I let this scheduled activities model go ahead and handle that and add it to its object? And then that would mean that when it identifies it, as we just saw, it will go ahead and have all of that data ready. And what I'm wanting to know, that data ready being the list of residents. And that's what I'm trying to sort of express with this logic here. Well, actually, that's the thing. It exists on the schedule activity model. So here's my schedule activity model, and I've created a resident relationship, and then I've gone ahead and used this to access those residents. So resident is being created via the resident model, and I believe those exist in memory, and then this is somehow accessing them because it's not giving me an error. I may need to just do this tomorrow. So the DD, this may not help, but it's kind of my next thought, and I'm still trying to find where Adam in a video goes ahead and has a model accessing information from another model via a method on that former model reference. So this may be what I need to do, I'm not sure, but that's kind of what I have in mind, just to see if it's getting anything, and then if it is, I can pass it along, and then I want to be able to check, that I can see the value of those residents being created. So that's still where it's a bit of a question mark in my mind. So here is the unit test, scheduled activity test, And in essence, all I was doing here was coming up with a test for formatting the date. What this talks about is, so the arrange step, we're creating the date, and I went ahead and used a factory. So I've gone and set this up for, and I didn't use it in that first example because it's just so simple. If this ever got big, that's where you wouldn't need all of this data. Like if there were lots and lots of fields, maybe you would only want to overwrite one of those fields. Just to use it though, I went ahead and did, and then and that way I can put in whatever date time I want and then check that formatting. So this is using a bit of the, as they say, Laravel magic. What I've done is I've created on the scheduled activity model, I forget the name of it, but this formatted date time is represented by this bit of code right here, and this in the Laravel documentation. The get and the attribute on the end of this formatted date time creates a property on this model that is referenced with those underscores that we just saw. So here, so it's automatic that it is putting that date on the model, and what we've done for that is we've set this protected variable up here that is the date. Anyway, just to be aware, this is still a little bit murky in my mind as to how it works, but we're setting up a date variable, we're setting up a property via the get, whatever the property name is, attribute, and this way we can go ahead and take care of whatever formatting we want, and it will feed that value through for our use, in this case, on the actual web page itself. I think that's enough for this evening.